All righty, please give it up for Brother Michael Imhotep. Michael Imhotep.
All right, brother, thank you. All right, how's everybody doing today? People doing transactions, people in front of me right here. How's everybody doing today? Hotel. All right, so I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. All right, I know we're doing transactions, but let's hold it down a little bit. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, historian. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today to the Ujamaa market, put on by the Black Ball. Y'all having a good time today? Are you recycling your dollars with African American owned businesses? $1.3 trillion. We need to recycle with our businesses. So we are here because this is African American History Month, or used to be called Black History Month. So I want to deal some with the history of African American History Month and also talk about this year's annual theme. How many people know there's an annual theme each year for African American History Month, what used to be called Black History Month? It's been an annual theme going back to 1928. So oftentimes when I speak all across the country. I was speaking in Detroit last weekend. I'll be speaking tomorrow because I live in Detroit. I came in this morning for this event. I'm leaving as soon as this event is over with. I'm speaking in Detroit at St. Francis Missionary Baptist Church tomorrow, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, we're dealing with African American History Month. But many times when I speak at different events, 99% of the time, people don't know there's an annual theme. So the annual theme for 2019 was called Black Migrations. It wasn't just dealing with the forced migration like the transatlantic slave trade, even though that's important. It focused on the migration of African people. It focused on the migration of African people in the 20th century. The Great Migration, 1915 and 1970. Okay, 6 million African Americans migrated from the South up north and out west. And this totally changes the country. And during that period of time, so we know that 2019 was the year of return. And we had a lot of African people from the African diaspora going back to Africa, going to Ghana, going to Senegal, things like this. So you have the 400th year anniversary of what was known as the year of return, commemorating August 20th, 1619 in Virginia. Now, even though August 20th, 1619 in Virginia did happen, that wasn't the first time African people came to this land. How many people know that? That wasn't the first time African people came to this land. One, in 1619, codified slave laws didn't exist in any of the 13 colonies. How many people knew this? The first colony to have codified slave laws was Massachusetts in 1641. They come to Virginia in 1661. What we know as slavery in this country didn't all just start just like that. It's going to evolve over a series of decades. And the slave laws are coming to the different colonies at different periods of time. Then if we go back to 1526, we see the Spanish who were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina and Georgia in 1526, 93 years before Jamestown, Virginia. And really, in Virginia, it wasn't really at Jamestown, it was really at Hampton, Virginia. They're coming into Fort Comfort, what's called Point Comfort, or Fort Comfort, there in Virginia. And you have those 20 and odd Africans on an English slave ship called the White Lion, and they're traded for food and supplies and water, things like this. But if we go back to 93 years before that, we had the Spanish taking Africans into South Carolina. Okay, and these Africans are going to overthrow their oppressors. There's about 100 of them. They overthrow their oppressors, and they're going to disappear. We don't know what happened to them. We believe they went to live with the Native Americans, because after that, we lose track of them. You go back before then, 1513. You have an African named Juan Garrido, J-U-A-N, Juan Garrido, comes into Florida with a Spanish conquistador named Juan Ponce de Leon. And Juan Garrido is of African descent. He's born in West Africa in 1480. Okay? If you read, in 2012, Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. Had a 6-part series on PBS called Many Rivers to Cross, the African Americans. And in episode 1, he talks about Margarita. Okay? So even though what happens is they try to start our history in 1619 in this country. But we were here long before that. And then if you read The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, from my friend Dr. David Imhotep, he talks about an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago, the Khoisan. The Khoisan come from southern Africa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. They go all around the world. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. And they're here in this land, okay, at least 51,700 years ago. So even though the transatlantic slave trade did happen, I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm saying we have to understand at least the last 50,000 years of history. And we have to understand the chronology of history and how this thing evolves. And the Spanish get involved in the transatlantic slave trade before the British get involved. The Portuguese get involved, they start in 1441. The Spanish are right behind them. And all of this is a continuation of the fight and the wars and the conflicts between the Moors, the Africans known as Moors, and Europeans all throughout Europe. This continues with the transatlantic slave trade. When you understand the transatlantic slave trade and the chronology, you can't start studying it in the 15th century. You can't start in 1455. You can't start in 1492 with Columbus, who never came to this land, by the way. Even though Columbus set sail on his first of 4 voyages, August 3rd, 1492. Columbus never comes to this land we call the United States of America. How many people know this? Columbus never comes to this land. If you look at where he goes into the Caribbean, he goes into Haiti, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Bahamas, Panama. He goes into South America a little bit. He's in Central America. He's in South America a little bit, and he's in the Caribbean. The closest he comes to this land is basically Cuba, which is about 90 miles away. He never sets foot on this landmass that we call the United States of America. Okay, but Columbus and his 4 voyages are going to help lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, and the exploitation of indigenous people, and to help spread the transatlantic slave trade. So if we look at this year's theme for African American History Month, is African Americans and the vote. African Americans and the vote. Why is that so important? One, this year, 2020, is the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment of 1870. Which guaranteed the right to vote for African American men, not African American women. That's not going to happen until 1920 and the 19th Amendment. 2, we see that this year is the 100th anniversary of women getting having the guarantee of the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. So when we look at the origins of African American History Month, we have to talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson is one of our, really I think one of our unsung heroes. Dr. Woodson is an educator. He's born in 1875, 10 years after slavery ends. He's born in New Canton County, Virginia. He's born to former slaves. He doesn't go to formal school until he's about 20 years old. He ends up getting a bachelor's degree from Berea College in 1893 in Kentucky. He gets another bachelor's degree from University of Chicago in 1907. He gets his master's degree in 1908 from University of Chicago. He gets a PhD in American history in 1912 from Harvard University. He becomes the second African American to get a PhD from Harvard, the first of African slave descent, because Dr. W.B. Du Bois, who gets his PhD from Harvard in 1895, was born to free parents. And because he's an educator and teaching children, he teaches at Frederick Douglass High School in Washington, D.C. He goes to teach at Howard University and also another institution. He understands that African Americans did not know their history, the children as well as the adults in general. So in 1915, after attending a 3-week symposium right here in Chicago that commemorated the 50th year anniversary of enslaved Africans being freed because of the 13th Amendment. This was a 3-week symposium where they had lectures, they had all types of exhibits to document the accomplishments and achievements of African Americans over that 50-year period of time. So he gets the idea to create an institution, to create an organization that documents, preserves, researches the accomplishments and achievements of African Americans, not just in this country, but in the Caribbean and on the continent of Africa. So he co-founds the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9, 1915, right here in Chicago. Okay? And we know that Chicago is named after a man of African descent. Okay? Y'all know that, right? John Baptiste Point du Salt. Y'all know that, right? Okay. I'm from Detroit, so I'm just checking. Yeah. All right. So what he's going to do, he co-founds the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915. 1916, he creates a journal, the Journal of Negro History. And this journal is a journal for African-American historians to publish their papers, because a lot of the white historical journals didn't want to publish our papers. They didn't want to deal with the topics we want to deal with. He creates a publishing company in 1921. This is a publishing company that published his books and published books by other scholars, but they're also going to publish textbooks for African-American schools and some HBCUs. We were doing this in the 1920s. Also in the 1920s, you had the Marcus Garvey movement, okay, because Garvey's not convicted till 1923. You had the Marcus Garvey movement, the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association. They're here in Chicago, they're in Detroit, things like this. In 1920, 1919, you have what's called the New Negro. This is after World War I ends. World War I is 1914 to 1918. And this really catapults, this really starts the beginning of the Great Migration. Because when 5 million men go fight in World War I, most of them white, about 340,000 African American, it creates a labor vacuum in the factories, especially the factories up north. So then you have African Americans who are being marketed to by Henry Ford. They're being marketed to by other corporations that come from the fields in the South and come up north. Okay, so this begins the Great Migration, starting about 1915. Well, when these brothers come back home and they learn how to fight, how to shoot, and they fight for this country, many of them die for this country, they say, we want all of our rights right now. We're not going to deal with this segregation, the lynchings taking place. We know 1917, you have the march of 10,000 African Americans marching down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, the silent march. Y'all familiar with that? The silent march, they're dressed in white. It's organized by James Weldon Johnson of the NAACP. He's also the same James Weldon Johnson that wrote the lyrics to Lift Every Voice and Sing, Till Earth and Heaven rings with the harmony of liberty, what we call a black national anthem. So they have the silent march protesting, demanding federal anti-lynching laws. And one of the things that precipitated that was the East St. Louis, Illinois race riot in 1917 that took place in Illinois, one of the early race riots that took place in the North. But after World War I ends, when these brothers come back home in 1919 is known as the Red Summer. How many people familiar with the Red Summer of 1919? So last year was the 100th year anniversary of the Red Summer. The Red Summer, you had over 25 major race riots in this country. Why did this happen? Because when these white men went to go fight in World War I, they left jobs behind. When they came back home, these jobs were being filled by African Americans and immigrants who were here. And it's going to explode in race riots. A lot of these white men couldn't find jobs when they came back. They learned how to fight, how to shoot, how to kill in the war, and so did we. So it's going to, you have one in Elaine, Arkansas, where over 200 sharecroppers are killed. You familiar with the race riot that took place here in Chicago starting July 27th, 1919? Because of what happened at Lake Michigan? You familiar with that? 17-year-old black boy named Eugene Williams was stoned to death while he's in the river. He accidentally crossed the imaginary line separating the white beach from the black beach. This causes the race riot to explode for a number of days. The U.S. troops have to be called in to put down the race riot. That's part of the Red Summer 1919. It was called the Red Summer by James Weldon Johnson because he said the streets of America were flowing with blood. This is why it's called the Red Summer. So when we look at the theme for this year's theme is African Americans and the vote. African Americans and the vote. We know this is the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment. We know the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment of 1920 that guaranteed the right to vote for women. But how many people know that the U.S. Constitution does not explicitly give anybody the right to vote? How many people know that? Nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give the right to vote. The 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, and then the 26th Amendment. The 26th Amendment of 1971 lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. Those two amendments, the language was patterned after the 15th Amendment. So there was I did a presentation last Saturday in Detroit dealing with African American History Month, this year's theme, and I'll break this down. There's an article from Smithsonian Institute. Came out February 3rd, 2020. February 3rd is the 150th anniversary of the passing of the 15th Amendment. And the name of this article is, does an amendment give the right to vote? Does an amendment give you the right to vote? People should read this. Because nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anybody the right to vote, even white people. So we tied this into the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we understand that this is a pivot. This year right here, I mean, I know years ago they had the Vote or Die campaign. This year right here, with Trump in office, trying to get a second term, if you think this fool is crazy right now, wait to see what happens. You don't want to see what happens if he gets a second term. He will be totally unhinged. So when we look at the 65 Voting Rights Act, that ties into the 2016 election and what happened in the 2016 election and the voter suppression that took place. Because the 2016 election, presidential election, was the first election in 50 years that did not have the full weight of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, first presidential election. How many people are familiar with the U.S. Supreme Court case of Shelby County versus Holder, 2013? U.S. Supreme Court case. See, this time, I do presentations dealing with history, but I also do presentations dealing with politics and law. I do 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how law and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. Because Shelby County versus Holder, anybody familiar with that U.S. Supreme Court case, 2013, which gutted Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which weakened the Voting Rights Act, and right after that happened, 14 new states had new voter ID laws to suppress the African American vote, suppress the vote of college students, things like this. So in the 2016 presidential election, did you know there were 868 fewer polling places in this country? The majority of them shut down in black communities and Hispanic communities. Did you know today there's 1,700 fewer places to vote across the country? And it's going to continue. So when we look at, and the reason why that happened was, Section 5 dealt with what was called pre-clearance. So what happened was, the states that had a history of putting obstacles in the way of African Americans voting, poll taxes, literacy tests, things like this, those former Confederate states that took up arms against the Union and broke away from the Union during the Civil War, they had to get permission or pre-clearance from a federal judge before they made any changes to polling locations, the number of weekends that you have souls to the polls voting, where people go vote after church, all different types of things like this. But when Section 5 was gutted, they didn't have to get that pre-clearance. They could basically do what they wanted to do. And this is what happened. Okay? So this is a voter suppression tactic. So we have to understand, in 2016, there was a voter suppression tactic for Republicans, but also African Americans were targeted with a disinformation campaign from Russia. So when we deal with this, when we deal with understanding the impact of the vote, we have to understand that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. And the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics impacts every aspect of your life. From the quality of the water you drink. I live in Detroit. Flint, Michigan is in Michigan. We knew about what was going on in Flint before the rest of America did. Okay? And then you have a lot of other cities that have problems with lead in the water as well because of the infrastructure. The pipes are old. Politics deals with everything from the water you drink to the food you eat to the air you breathe. How many people know that? So this year is 2020. We know there's a census taken this year, right? And they start in April. If you have somebody looking for a job, the Census Bureau is hiring 5,000 people, just so you know. Go to census.gov, okay? So you got somebody living in your house, not working, sleeping on your couch, living in your basement, okay? Tell them to go to census.gov. But how many people know there's an annual census report that comes out every year in September dealing with income and poverty? When we look at the annual census report that came out in 2019, one of the things it talked about is how the quality of air across the country has deteriorated over the past 3 years. That ties into a rollback of environmental regulations that Trump is rolling back. So this impacts African Americans who have asthma, bronchitis, all types of things like this, okay? And a lot of times we don't connect policies with conditions. Laws, policies, and conditions, okay? They're all tied together. This all ties into history. So we have to understand that Election Day is the opportunity to fire the people that we call in the radio shows every day complaining about. Because I do radio in Detroit. People call in the radio shows every day complaining about elected officials. Election day is your opportunity to fire them. Okay? So here in Chicago, how's Kim Foxx doing? The attorney, the state district attorney here. Yeah, because we hear good things about Kim Foxx. You have a lot of progressive attorneys. Kim Foxx in Cook County, Chicago. You got Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore. You got Kimberly Lawrence in St. Louis, okay, who is suing the city of St. Louis because she's saying the police, like the white police and other people, are interfering with her actually doing her job, and she's suing based upon the Ku Klux Klan Act, the Ku Klux Klan law of 1871, which is from Reconstruction. So you have a lot of progressive DAs, district attorneys, who are charging police officers for killing African Americans, who are throwing out cases from corrupt police officers. We see that happen in Chicago with Kim Foxx, okay? We see that happen with Marilyn Mosby. What happened was a lot of African Americans and other people realized, well, wait a second, these positions are elected officials. We don't have to keep taking this. We can vote these people out of office like y'all have voted, you voted Anita Alvarez out of office. Okay, it took her 400 days to prosecute Officer Jason Van Dyke, who shot and killed Lapon McDonald. Everything was on video. I'm in Detroit, I know that. Okay, I know about that. I also know that the city of Chicago paid out $512 million in police misconduct lawsuits from 2005 to 2015. So when the teachers in Chicago went on strike, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot said, we don't have the money to pay you what you want, well, that's good. You paid out $500 million in 106 police misconduct lawsuits. This all deals with laws and policies. Okay? I'm in Detroit and I know this. So all this is connected, okay? All right, so I'm gonna wrap up with this. Come over to my table over here. I have my DVD lectures there. We have them dealing with black migrations. We have them dealing with understanding the transatlantic slave trade, where they didn't teach you in school, Black Panther, Black Wall Street, a number of different things, all right? Listen to the African History Network show Sundays, 9 p.m. 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 910 a.m. Superstation WFDF in Detroit. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. For more information, remember, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. I want to thank you for your attention. Imhotep Asante Sana, and come over and see me at my table. Peace. And Wakanda forever. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever.